Welcome to this session. My name's Lucy Siegle. I'm an environmental journalist. I've been in the media since about 1748, or it certainly feels that way. And I've been battling to try and get more space and more airtime for climate and nature crisis communications. I have worked with music industry. I may have met some of you before. I work a lot with Ellie Goulding, who's a fantastic climate ambassador for UNEP, and I work a lot with the UN as well. So I've spent the last sort of 5 or 6 years really trying to understand about how not to lose celebrities' followers by getting them to post about climate. So where is my responsibility in all of this? Well, it's to lots of different organisations. We've got an amazing panel for you now, and I'll introduce with a wide range of experiences. We don't have very long, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from one of our panellists who's going to present to us, who definitely knows something about making an image, because recently one of his images got like 1 billion views or downloads or whatever. And then we are going to have a few questions up here, and then I'd like you to ask your questions. So please don't be shy. Help us out and keep them coming. Let me introduce you to our panelists, and then Zed is going to present. So come on up as I call your name. We have Zed Anwar, who's a visual artist. Hi, Zed. Thank you very much. We have the brilliant Hannah Cox. Come on up from Better Not Stop, and Kendall Calling. Many of you will know Hannah. And we have Chris Tofu, the esteemed DJ, activist, anarchist, whatever we want to, labels we want to attribute to him. So we're going to have a pretty interesting conversation, right? Okay, so what we're going to try and talk about is switching on your audience, creative climate communication, but we've already had a pre-chat, and it went loads of different ways, so we may veer off topic a little bit. I'm going to hand over to Zed to do a presentation first. It's all yours, Zed. Thank you very much.
Let me grab the clicker. Hi, guys. You enjoying the event today? Yeah. My name's Zed. I do a bit of visual communications, but actually I'm working in the NHS at the moment, so I've always enjoyed working in places where, you make a difference in people's lives or, in the world's life. And basically, I've been doing creative work for a little while, and one of my campaigns went viral. Basically, from a creative perspective, one of my biggest horrors all through my career doing it is people asking for a logo, because people, a 5-minute job could take 2 years. People are never satisfied with a logo, but it just shows how much people put into that one visual piece of work. And I've tapped into that, and I think I created a campaign where I've been looking at where car manufacturers, etc., like that, they've got an animal in their logo, and it's a powerful logo from Jaguar, etc., like that, Peugeot, and we rely a lot on fossil fuels, obviously, etc. And I know we're going through towards electric, which also raises its own issues. But I think with this campaign went viral all across the world. It was on French TV. Not that I got to see it, but it was a very good campaign, and it's got people talking, and that's a major thing. And in a certain way, as a creative, I also want to be able to hold brands responsible for, we buy their products, everything like that. So I think they've got a lot more to play, and I think, especially in the advertising industry, we're pushing a lot more barriers now, especially with brands, holding brands accountable. And let me start with the campaign that went viral. So basically, I took the logos and turned them into skeletons. So you've got Ferrari there, Lamborghini, and the Mustang, Shelby. And I'll show you one of my favorite ones. Which one? Let me see where it is. Yeah. Peugeot. Peugeot. It's an interesting fact. I studied that. I looked up some research today, and I looked at over nearly 1 million Peugeots were made in 2020, 1 million Peugeot cars, and yet there's only about 50,000 Lions left, etc., like that out there. And so the car is taking over the planet. So I think by raising this issue and turning it into skeletons, it's like, what would the brand be without the animal? Jaguar has the emblem symbolises courage, pride, etc., leaping forward, etc. but there'll be nothing without the animal. So a lot of these brands rely on animals and that instinct to sell their brand, and they don't get no commission. And these two are my other two favourite ones. Dodge, everyone wants it on a T-shirt, but I think the message that it symbolises is very, very powerful. And it started off from looking at car companies, and then like, I thought, well, let me wait a minute, let me think, because it's not just car companies, it's also the whole infrastructure of brands from Bacardi, Lacoste. They'll be wasting money on transportation, etc. like that. And it's just a wake-up call for brands to see this is what the future holds for you. So Twitter, obviously, you know, it's already dying a bit, like Chang Beer, Chicago Bulls, and it's surprising how many animals are used in brands nowadays. Cannes Lions, the England shirt, etc. like that. And and it's resonated well with the world. But March the 3rd, one of my great campaigns is happening, and it's running for the 3rd year in conjunction with WWF. And again, it's working with logos, and it's just to get brands talking about, you know, and getting football teams, etc. like that. And it's reaching an audience which normally wouldn't pay heed to climate issues, etc. Obviously, you know, Millwall fans, Chelsea fans, Arsenal fans are all right, but yeah. So, World Without Nature, I'm going to play the video we made last year. So this year it's going to be even bigger, more billboards out there, more teams taking part. Got Aston Villa, Wolves taking part. And it's just to get the kids involved. I think communication, all that, visualizations start from a young age. And I think, you know, getting children involved in sports and everything and making aware of brands. So this is like a picture I made of all the brands if they're all outside living in the wildlife. And I'm going to play a video. So here's the video. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's the video. It'd be great if you've got an animal in your brand to join us on March the 3rd and, you know, talk to me if you want to get involved. I'll show you how to get involved and, yes, make a change because, you know, I've got 2 children and I think, you know, what I had and what they're getting left with is, I think is a tragedy. So I think we've still got time to change it. So let's all get together and do that.
Should we move on? Zed, thank you so much for that. It's such powerful work. And I'm just wondering, like, what feedback have you had from brands? Have you had any?
Obviously, brands are very protective nowadays. I think a lot of the work I've done, especially the fossil fuel one, is, you know, you wouldn't get a brand involved. But what was interesting is hearing people that do own Jaguar cars, etc., in the comment sections, you know, and how they want to make a change, you know. And I think it's a collective effort too. Obviously, cars are going to be there, but I think I was talking to Hannah earlier, and, you know, people driving less, etc., like that. So I think brands, people get told off for using brand, but I've got away with it because I'm a freelancer, so you know, you can sue me, you know. Yeah, but I think because it got so viral, you know, they couldn't afford not to, they had to see it. everyone saw it, so they had no choice. So
Yeah, and it's also unforgettable as well. Like once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, which you know, for me, is one of the hallmarks of a really important subversive, you know, piece of visual art. So I congratulate you because it's
thank you.
it's freaking excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you. Hannah, would you move across a little bit? Shall we go into a more a little bit of a, there we go, cozier. Zed just brought up something which I also think is super interesting. We've got this like community, we've got some freelancers like us who skip in and out and you can't touch us and we can say this and we can do that, so sue us. Then you've got these huge organisations, and a lot of festivals are very, very big organisations. Is it the case that we should all be looking to do different jobs, and how do we sort out who communicates what?
Easy first question.
Yeah, so I guess my question for you is, what is the responsibility of a festival like Candle Calling, a big festival? Is it to minimise waste and get a grip on single-use plastics, or is it bigger than that? And
I think it's bigger than that. It's taking responsibility as a human being on what you create in the world. So it's for that festival organiser or organisation to realise that what they are creating has an impact on the world, and whether they want that to have a positive impact or a negative impact, and where they identify the challenges in what they create having a negative impact, actively seeking ways to find solutions as opposed to ignoring it or thinking it's somebody else's problem.
So there's a solutions component. Is there also an opportunity within a festival environment to talk about these issues, you know, and the very stark reality of the climate and nature crisis?
Yeah, definitely. For a bit of background, I've worked in the music industry for on and off since I was like 19. But I was really interested in sustainability outside of music, and I never really married the two. And then last year I did an industry report called the More Than Music Report, which is available for free online. It's a 60-page industry report, and I surveyed 100 UK music festivals, figuring out what you were all actually doing when it came to the climate crisis, because I knew what I thought you should be doing, but I actually wanted to see what was feasible and what are the challenges and solutions available there. And what I found through existing research and our own research is that actually the audience is very receptive to learning new things at a music festival. You go to a festival to experience new things with a friend. You go to a festival to experience new bands. So why wouldn't you be going to a festival to experience new ideas? So you're actually in a very, very powerful position as a music festival to share messages with your audience that they might not usually be receptive to or have the time in their busy day to really engage with. So there's a really huge opportunity, I think, for festivals to connect with their audience in different ways dependent on the festival to make a really huge change.
Do you ever think, do you think that people should be worried about preaching? Because they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of the things that I do in my business is we teach carbon literacy, and we talk about active listening, which is about empathetic listening, and when we talk about the climate crisis, acknowledging that people are at different stages, different opportunities. For example, I don't have any kids. I have got a dog though. Very different apparently. And my sister's working a minimum wage job with 4 children in a council house. Her priorities, her challenges and solutions are very different from mine as a human, and therefore the things that she's going to approach and look at are going to be different. And it's the same with festivals. Every festival has a unique experience, a unique personality. So how do you talk to your particular audience when you're talking about the climate crisis? Some festivals that might be talking about take your tent home. Other festivals might not have that issue. It might actually be about what can you do to empower your audience to vote, lobby, be a bit more activist in their activity.
Okay, brilliant. That active listening thing, that's also what a lot of climate policy makers use now in, you know, like COP27 and all that kind of stuff. Chris, tell us about your work and just about the point that Hannah makes about, you know, not everyone at a festival is going to be receptive or maybe have the bandwidth to also take on some extra messaging, you might assume.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd just like to start, I'm going to answer that question, obviously.
You don't have to.
I will.
Do what you want.
But first of all, I would like to say from my perspective that I've been in festivals for like 35 years now, playing in anarchist bands, jumping fences, and, you know, all the way to where we are now. I run Shangri-La at Glastonbury. been involved in that event for 35 years. And in the beginning, and I will keep saying it until I'm not on this planet anymore, a lot of festivals came from alternative places that already came with messages about saving the planet. And I wonder sometimes if we haven't spent that whole time trying to retain those messages whilst the corporate messages get louder and louder. But in Shangri-La, we employ more or less 380 artists. And we make a lot of installations, but most of those installations are from recycled stuff, which again doesn't mean that we're actually saving the planet, because we have to bring all this recycled stuff into the festival. But we clearly are all about the message in that field and getting over this sort of stuff, along with Greenpeace, who do remarkable work. So we're always bashing away at the message about saving the planet, because frankly, we come from that place initially, you know. But I think as you get more and more commercial events, people can say a lot of tokenistic stuff. There's a lot of greenwash, but really the best place for those messages to come from is from the artists. So some artists, obviously we've got Brian Eno talking here today. Wow. But you know, a lot of lesser artists probably fear to say some stuff sometimes as well. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people from our ILMC in here now who've come to have swanky meetings with agents and stuff like that. You know, it's like, you know, if the whole of that infrastructure really got on the message. I was using the example of, we had Brexit here that all of us knew was going to destroy us, and some of us tried to run a campaign where we wrote to lots of people and asked their artists to actually say register to vote, and yeah, we got a lot of kickback against that. A lot of people saying, "Oh, it's not in our artist's interest to say anything." Blah, 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 blah. So, you know, you guys in this room actually have a lot of power if you're in the ILMC and you're talking to agents. You can say to them yourselves, "Hey, what's the message?" Or, you know, we could look at messaging, or have like, I think Holger and his gang were talking about having like key brands that every band can say, "Hey, here's one about saving the planet, and this is what you can do about sustainability." But yeah, we use art, we use it all the time, not just in Shangri-La. We're working for WikiLeaks and Vivienne Westwood's team at the moment, and we try to do like you do. I guess when you have these stuff like you're doing, we call it subtivising, because it looks like an advert, but it isn't. So that you can really go to town on that stuff in any festival really quite cheaply, because people like Zed, people like Obey in America and stuff like that, they're sending you actually files, and then you print those files out into enormous posters on recycled paper. So you can get those messages out to balance them out. Even if you're in the most corporate festival in the land, you can still play with those things.
And sorry to ask a really square question. Legally, does that carry any legal liability?
Well, I think you said it at the beginning. It's like, yeah, sue us. Do you know what I mean? Because we ain't got nothing anyway, you know, and also, what the fuck? Not really, I don't think so. I think, you know, a lot of people aren't even putting posters up these days, they're projecting them on walls.
Right.
Like led by Donkeys in the UK and other really great organisations. So I think in terms of art, and I'm sure this conversation isn't about that, there are a bunch of great artists like Zed, Fokker Wolf, Banksy does his thing, and a whole load of other people, like the guy from Massive Attack, that people are really, really thinking about these things all the time. However, I will say that although we do, as I say, we build 50% of our venues from recycled material and junk, it's not. It's more symbolic, because at the end of the day, I think you'll probably learn by the end of this meeting today that actually festivals that plug into the mains are a really great idea. And you know, we're still fighting those in our countryside festivals because there's just not enough power. So, you know, it's a very complex subject. I'm sure everyone in this room has got brilliant examples of it.
Can I add to the artist stuff? So we worked for, one of our clients is Kendall Calling, and we work with Blue Dot as well. We worked with them last year on a campaign called Leave Nothing But Memories, which involved a lot of stakeholders in the festival. But to go on to the artist bit, we wrote a pledge for the artists to sign. We were like, here's a good first step, get the artists to sign this pledge. Just wanted to give you some stats from that. 96% of the artists signed the artist pledge. I won't say who didn't, but let's just say probably the ones with the biggest agents, you might guess, who probably didn't even know an artist pledge existed because it probably didn't even pass their desk. But 96% of artists signed the artist pledge. 89% of artists changed their rider when asked if they would change it to more environmentally sustainable choices. 37% of them also committed to reducing their rider, and the difference in cost being donated to charity. So that was something that actually didn't get a lot of airplay after the festival, something that the festival did, but made actually a huge difference behind the scenes, and also of the experience of the artists coming to the festival, that they knew that was something the festival cared about.
Did you say didn't get a lot of airplay?
We did a big tent waste project for Kendal. It used to have around 6,000 to 7,000 tents left at the end of the festival. We reduced that down to just over 300, which is 25,000 capacity festival. I hated those 300 people, to be honest. But
that is incredible.
The fact that we could go around in a golf buggy with the festival organiser on Monday afternoon, which I know is everyone's favourite time of the festival. And that was when I found out whether I'd done a good job or not. And I'm there with the festival organiser who's knackered on the Monday, and we're counting tents in a field. And every time it was going up, I was like, oh God. But yeah, 300. So
wow.
Same as Glastonbury, I think 98.07% of tents got taken that year. So that got a lot of attention. The artist stuff, not so much. But
right.
That was a big difference too.
Right. And why do you think the artists' stuff didn't get much attention? Is it just that it got eclipsed by a bigger story, which was the tent one?
I think it got eclipsed by a bigger story. And the actual work we did on the festival, that was the kind of consumer-facing side of the work that we did, whereas we did lots of work behind the scenes with the festival. Everybody was involved, supporting us in every area of the festival. We worked on their impact, not just tents.
Okay, cool. So, Zed, what sort of, what would help you in your work? What do you need to happen next?
To make brands more sustainable, etc. I think it's we're always asking the brands to like hold, and I think the consumer has to push the brands, you know, make them accountable. So people buy Puma or anything like that, you know, you hold the brands to account, ask them for change. There's a social media's there now, so these questions be raised, and you know. There's cancel culture, etc. But you know, brands are fearful of that, and I think you know it shows how much power we actually hold over brands. So I think we need to push them just as much. They want to make a change because they won't make the change if we're not asking for change. So it's important. Yeah, that's what I think is important. So it's just pushing really hard the brands, and I think even as a creative myself. If I'm in an agency or something like that, I want to be working on sustainable projects, asking real questions, etc. You know, I think the next crisis facing us is the devices we're holding in our hands. You know, the fossil fuels that are used to produce it, and the minerals, and the labour that's used. You know, child labour, etc. Like that. We don't realise because we don't see it. Brands have a good tendency and to not. Show that side of their market, but really that needs to be highlighted. And I think, like we said, we hold the power over the brands really, and we've got to show that.
Yeah, I mean, for many years I've been involved in the fashion industry and trying to get the fashion industry to clean up its act. So you know that's been one of my things that I've concentrated on most. And it was really interesting. A new film's just come out called Fashion Reimagined, if anyone gets to see it, and it follows a designer called Amy Powney, who was one of the star designers at London Fashion Week some years ago, and won net emerging designer, and decided to put that money into making really sustainable clothing and nothing else. And honestly, the pain of that journey is unbelievable that you watch in this film. It's so hard. It is so hard because, like you're saying, Chris, everything has a footprint. You know, you're bringing stuff on site. Imagine the fashion industry. Everything you touch or think of has just such a profound impact environmentally and socially. And one of the things that she said last night, she did a screening last night, and we had a conversation afterwards, was that the way that she takes a stand is things like she's not using influencers, she's only working with activists. So she's been pushed to a point when the industry is so unwilling to give that she's having to do little boycotts and stuff herself. Do you think that we should be stronger with industry refuseniks, I suppose, who are refusing to sort of change. Hannah, do you think, we're all saying we want more artists, we want more buy-in from agents and stuff like that. For example, maybe we should say who didn't sign the pledge. Maybe it's time.
I would say, if it
I
was
know
my
you would.
festival, I would happily say it. But actually, I should have thought to message Andy and Ben and ask if it was okay. I'm sure they probably would say, yeah, it's fine, but we'd say we didn't say you could. Yeah, I mean, but I think it's about, you have to take a stand. If you're running an event, if you're running a business, if you're running a festival, that's your values being shown to the world.
Yeah.
So you've got to stand up for what you believe in, you know, and I think actually it creates a stronger brand, a stronger connection with your audience. People don't want, you know, people want to be guided by the brands that they love and be helped in and supported in that journey. And I think it's a bit late now for us to not have an opinion on the climate crisis as an industry, as a race, you know.
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone. I was on a podcast yesterday. She said some of our listeners are still climate deniers, and I was.
What
just
podcast was
like,
this?
It's an e-commerce podcast, and it was interesting because we sit in our filter bubbles, I think, sometimes. So I think what I would say to people in the room is, in the same way that Claire and her team have recognised industry beyond festivals is looking to do more, look at what other brands and other industries and sectors are doing to push that climate crisis messaging. Because you can take those ideas and use them in your own industry and have really strong messages there. Yeah,
yeah, and we're seeing that, aren't we, with things like Client Earth? So we're seeing other lenses being applied to some of these issues, and some of these sectors, I guess. Like in the fashion industry, we've actually worked with lawyers to try and break the excuse factory that is not paying garment workers a living wage, and we're getting close to be able to push on that now. So, is there an argument for having a more expansive conversation away from just the music industry and talking to other sectors and looking for examples from other places?
Yeah, I mean, when we say music industry, festival organising industry, production, you know, we are not the, you know, for instance, probably about less than 1% people just working in production are not from a diverse background. 10% of the UK is Asian. There's hardly any Asian acts on stage. You know, we've got a lot of we're still cleaning our house up a lot. Some issues have gone through brilliantly, like the tent one, like having more women working in the industry. There seems to be a bit more, that sort of changed a little bit. So I think we've got quite a lot of work to do on ourselves, for sure, not just the wider world.
Why do you think something like the tent thing has, you know, works and other things don't? Like what ingredients does that
It's just
that
repulsive.
have?
It's repulsive.
So it's a visual, because it's so visceral.
Repulsive, really. That's
So,
what it is to it.
but it's also it's a visual.
Visually
change,
repulsive.
But it's
you can
also,
see it.
I mean, a lot of my research is in consumer behaviour, and there's a really good book called Litterology. Well, good for me, maybe not for
called
everybody.
what?
Litterology, about like litter and waste, and you know, as we are herd animals, so we'll go with what everybody else is doing. There's a reason at Reading and Leeds, I think they have such an issue, is because when you're in a space that is going crazy and not being looked after during the event, then you're going to find it harder to clean it up post-event, because people have just been going, they haven't seen that difficulty. In the same way, you know, you might not swear in front of your mum or your nan, but in front of your friends down the pub you would. So it's like, how do we create environments where the kind of unethical behaviour is actually like offensive to everybody in the room?
Yeah.
You know, so so I think it's about how do we bring those conversations to people, whereas it's like, you know, Chris was saying, you're challenging. You know, as a festival, why don't you challenge other festivals that aren't doing good stuff? You know, you'll be showing your audience what you care about as a festival, and why can't you join wider campaigns like donating to Client Earth, which is what we do in our business, signing up to the Better Business Act, amending your business legal documents to say that you work in the interests of the stakeholders, not just your shareholders. That's something you can do. You know, don't just put your money where your mouth is, put your actions where your mouth is. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about it, and I was actually doing it, and they're giving an excuse, and it's frustrating.
Good. Very good. That's what we want. So let's just take some questions. I'm sure you have questions. Who has a question for me? Yes, gentleman here.
Yeah, I think absolutely picking up on what's been said. I'm trying to bring a sustainable, reusable, fold flat box for street food and festival food and everything to market. And the biggest challenge is changing consumer behaviour, because it just seems that everybody thinks that it's corporates or it's festival owners or it's somebody else that's got to pick up the baton and pick up the cost if there is one, rather than individuals actually taking on board there is a cost for making things better.
So people won't pay for it, or they don't want to do whatever?
They don't want to pay for it, basically. Yeah. If it's given to them free, fantastic. But if there's a cost involved, then no, they don't. They'd rather just carry on doing what they do, which is use a single-use throwaway container and, out of sight, out of mind.
What do we do about that?
Well, the cost is you're losing customers, I think, if you're not showing that you're doing sustainable things as a festival. It's easy for me to say stuff based on my opinion, so I'll just be very clear when I'm giving my opinion as well. Most of it's opinion, but facts was why I wrote the report, because I want the facts to show that what I'm saying is not just nice to have. Shouldn't we all have lovely sustainable businesses? I'm very conscious that businesses are commercial enterprises and they need to grow. So I think it's about, in the respect of what you're creating, what you're doing, it's having the conversations with people at where they're at in that journey in regards to, is this something maybe you should be, I don't know specifically about your business, but something that you're approaching brands so that brands can use it as an opportunity, creative agencies taking stuff to festivals rather than directly to the festivals. I think it's about kind of being able to show the data of the commercial reasons of investing in what is called cathedral thinking, which is long-term thinking when it comes to your events, and also what consumers are looking for. There's lots of research proving that Gen Z have an expectation now that businesses look after people and the planet. It's not just a nice to have for them anymore. It's an expectation as a baseline that you're doing that. So those that are not doing that, those dinosaurs who are still thinking in the capitalist ideal, are going to get left behind, because there's new ideas like donut economics coming out about how we should be running our businesses, and B Corps as an example. So you need to get with it or you will get left behind. That's the way I see it.
Do you think we should think less about consumers and what they're willing to do, and look at people as, citizens, global citizens who can behave bad or well, as we all can, and it's about giving them the opportunity to make a right decision, I guess.
Yeah, but going back to what Zed's saying, it's about people recognising they have the power. You've got the power. There's nearly 1,000 music festivals in the UK. If you're not showing your audience what you care about, they'll go spend their money elsewhere. There's a reason. 50% of audiences surveyed by Bucks Uni said they pay more for a festival ticket if they knew that money was going towards environmentally sustainable options. So the research is there showing you invest before rather than having to invest after.
Yeah.
There's something in this, perhaps. I don't know.
I hope so, absolutely.
Okay,
it's a bit of a pushing against closed door at the moment, but hopefully things will change.
Please hang on in there. Let us know if we can help you, because, we need, there's this sort of things brought to market that we need. Okay, somebody else had a question? Yes, thank you. Here's the microphone. It's so lovely. You all know how to use a microphone. It's lovely.
Hi, this isn't a question. It's more for a bit of good news for Zed. The Chartered Institute of Marketing is working with marketeers, working within these big brands to wake them up to the plight of the climate and actually find solutions and not to bring out products. So there is some good news for you there. That was just really my statement.
That's really good news.
Yeah, we're all for good news, yeah. You're having an effect, clearly.
But also, I think from a creative perspective, I think if you create I think there's a big thing in agencies creating campaign. We created it, we promoted it, and that's it. It's left. It's not sustainable. It's just a one-off shop. But I think my WWF campaign is going on yearly, and I think when it comes to environmental issues, and I think agencies should be creating ideas not to just win awards amongst themselves, but to actually make a real change in the world. So I think they need to come up with ideas that, you know, you just don't forget about. You pushing a brand and it's going yearly. So I think that it's a long-term effort rather than, you know, oh, look, here I am, and then trending hashtag for one day. It should be every day.
Yeah, and it's like a longevity, it's like a trans-seasonal, like, sorry to keep referencing the fashion industry, but you know, that's what sustainability is as well. It's not, it's constant kind of new.
And I'm touching back on what Chris said, like, you know, more diversity and everything, and I think the creative industry has been one of the worst industries for diversity. And I think they need more people like myself and more people from different backgrounds. It's like, you know, I'm from Pakistan, etc., like heritage, etc. So I kind of bring more to the table and bring a bit more, a different energy, because, you know, it's my country getting exploited by cheap labour or this and that, or whatever like that. So I think putting more diverse people around the table actually brings more harder questions to answer. It's not, you know, it's not easy answering these questions, and I think we add something to the table, and, you know, and I think having us on the table, you know, is very important moving forward.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
The report
please.
we did also covers the social impact of festivals and also talking about diversity and line-up and things. So there's a lot of research we did in there. But actually the climate change industry is the second least diverse industry in the UK after farming. So we're worse, if that makes you feel better, than the festival industry. But something a brand that I'm working with at the moment, we work with at Kendall Calling Faith in Nature have done, is they've put nature in the boardroom. So they have someone who represents nature on their board, who has a vote for nature, and who makes decisions based on nature whenever they're making strategic decisions as a company. First one in the world to do it. They have on their website how you can do that as a business. If you don't have an advisory board as a festival, why don't you get a diverse group of people on your advisory board so you're listening to those voices when you're making decisions for your event? That's something that can be done quite easily.
Because if you're not doing these kind of things, it's an excuse, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the person that's representing nature, like, so what's their title? The Earth.
The Earth, yeah. So they've got really good YouTube video on it, but it basically stems from the idea that you can be sat under you could sit under one of the trees in Hyde Park on your lunch break, hundreds of years old tree, whip your phone out, and for 17 quid create a company on Companies House, which has more legal rights than the tree you're sat under. And they were like, what? So they put nature in their boardroom. So now that person literally doesn't speak as a human, they speak as a representative of the natural world. I think it's somebody, a professor of environmental science, but you could find someone, I'm sure, at an academic institution near your own festival. But it really just makes sure that that voice is being listened to, actively listened to. Even if every decision you can't make puts nature at the forefront, you have to be acknowledging nature at every decision you do make, because that's where most of our festivals live as well, outside. So,
what do you make of this, these kind of developments? Does it make you feel better? Because when the first thing you sounded like you felt you were sometimes losing this battle.
No. Well, we're obviously not losing the battle, because GEI is usually half the size of it is right now. So thank you all for coming. That's amazing. I wanted to say really quickly, there is a real just going by the title of this talk as well, there is a real no-brainer how to get messages over to your audience. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's to do with programmers who, you know, live in little hives themselves and no one really hassles them. But I know it sounds really stupid, but yeah, you can have speakers between bands who actually communicate with your audience. I know it's like a no-brainer, but in Shangri-La and other stages that we do that, and we make sure speeches are only like 5 minutes. You know, it's not like a long lecture, but it really does help get a message over directly to the people at your festival.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking, oh yeah, I don't really know where those guys are, just, you know, contact this very organisation, would be happily supply that sort of thing. But that is the most simple way of getting a message over, you know.
Very good point. I once opened for Massive
Just saying
Attack.
that, guys. There you go. Yeah,
15 minutes on plastic.
Massive Attack would be amazing.
Slightly ran out of things to say, but you know, the heart was there. So you're giving us kind of these amazing tips slightly
It's a
sort of
no-brainer.
hidden. It's like it's a no-brainer to you, but these are the kind of things
Right.
that need to be like uncovered. And have you got any more, essentially?
Yeah, look at great examples. You know, I mean, we're lucky enough in the UK to have many, many great examples. I mean, Shambhala has just really pushed it through. I mean, I run a production company. We produce gigs for 2 million people a year. A lot of the things we see at Shambhala we've taken through.
Like what? Can you give us?
Well, I think it's just all around things like, you know, mainly about recycling, and we've gone for more veggie guys, Chris, at some of our events. But, you know, we have organised events in Trafalgar Square that are literally there for minutes sometimes as well, you know. So when we have to employ hundreds of stall holders a year now, we've got quite a few little things in there about disposable stuff like this guy was saying over here, otherwise you just can't get in. And that's what all the food and drinks organisers are complaining about, but let them, you know, as long as they don't start going, well, we can't give you this money because of this, they'll often try that out on you, but I think it's a good idea to have some firm things.
So you basically,
lots of toolkits around that you can use for that.
so you have to set the direction of travel, and you have to set your standards, and then it's like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a multi.
there.
You know, in a festival, you've got your production crew over there. They need to set the standards. The programming team. Obviously, we're not saying, you know, go and book a bunch of hippie bands singing about bees and birds. There could be such things, but there aren't. You know, but you know, okay. So put programmers on, because
Yeah.
most of the big festivals
Yeah.
have the rubbishest changeovers where there's absolutely no vibe at all.
Yeah.
Some of them don't, but you know, use that time, use it effectively, get the message over. I'd say that was a really good way to do it.
It's a very good point. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at our customer journey at Kendall when we worked for Kendall. So we had the Leave Nothing But Memories campaign. That was like the overarching consumer-facing campaign. And we thought, how do we just talk to people through that whole festival process? And at each of those touch points, can we do what we make more impactful or more sustainable? So, for example, on the lanyards, an hour before the main arena opened, we had a clean-up hour on the schedule.
Yeah.
So people were like, oh, what's going on this morning? Oh, it's a clean-up hour. What does that mean? You have to clean up your campsite before you go in. It was just these subtle hints throughout the day. I was really trying to push, which was not possible this year, that people who arrive by public transport could come on site earlier than people in cars, so they could get the best camping spots. Because that's obviously one of the things people want to get, is a really good camping spot. If you make it actually, if you go by public transport, you're more likely to get where you want to be for that whole weekend. It's probably going to encourage people on that public transport journey. Plus, what are the comms there? I think when we did our survey, like 14% of 14% of festivals had really good comms on how to get to their festival by public transport. I was like, well, why? How are you expecting people to do that if you're not making it easy for them? So we always say, easy, affordable, cool. If it's all three, or cool maybe is another word in your 20s now, I don't know, cool. You know, it's got to be minimum one, ideally three. Two's a really good indicator that someone will actually take that action. So when you're thinking about the behaviour of your audience, it's an easy thing to do. Put clean up hour on the lanyard, easy. Put speakers between acts, easy. You know, it's just thinking about those little. Just think for your customers, what's their journey with you? Do they camp? Do they go to the bar? What do they get from the bar? What do they usually eat? And where are they at in their journey? The Kendall audience is very different to the Blue Dot audience, so how we communicate with them this year is going to have to be a completely different strategy to how we communicate with Kendall.
Yeah, and it's and when you're doing these different things, so when you've got your messaging going about public transport, when you've got clean-up hour, all the rest of it, how much additional messaging does that carry? So do you always, because this is something I grapple with all the time, so do I have to say, oh, and we need to do this because the climate's burning and all the nature's dying. So like how layered do you think this information needs to be?
I think it depends on your audience. Like I said, I'll give you the examples of Kendall and Blue Dot because they're run by the same organisation, but they're very different audiences at the festival. For example, at Blue Dot, you're already getting speakers talking about the cosmos as main stage acts, not just as fillers, you know. That audience is already turning up, for example, with a reusable water bottle. They're taking their tent home already, all of those kind of things. So the conversation you're having with that audience, who are going to talk about climate change during the festival anyway, need to be above. We need to be talking about regeneration, a lot of regenerational strategies with them. If I talk to regeneration about an 18-year-old at Kendal Calling, they wouldn't even know what that word meant, which is fine. They're at different stage in their journey. What worked at Kendal was the Leave Nothing But Memories campaign. We were very clear on two things when we did that campaign. Couldn't have the word eco in it, couldn't have the word green in it, and we didn't want it to be like green and blue messaging, because people have become a bit blind to that now at festivals. We needed to put a concept on it that was more about a feeling, and how is this campaign going to make you feel. And it really worked with the Kendal audience, because Leave Nothing But Memories, people go to festivals to make memories.
Yeah.
And it just totally worked, and everything sat under it, so it was just a catchy, way to do all those different things.
It's really good. Any more questions? Anything anyone would like to share?
I think when the lady said she wanted to say about who didn't sign the pledge, just remember it's always easier to say sorry than ask permission.
Well, tell that to the planet when it's dead.
No, it's saying.
If guys didn't do the pledge, it's easier for you to say sorry than you announced them,
Yeah.
rather than ask them permission to come on the pledge. They didn't sign up to your pledge. 4% that was missing, if you had said such and such didn't do it, such and such didn't do it, it's easier for you to then say sorry for saying that than asking them.
Definitely easy for me. Probably not for the programmer.
Write it down and Zed will put it on a poster. So Zed, what sort of response did you get? I just want to go back to this global communications and the power of, talking to different audiences. Did you get any response from your work, from people on the front line of climate change in, different countries?
There were so many messages on social media, it was unbelievable. There was lots of conservation groups from South. I've really got a big response from places like India, South America, where climate change is right in front of them. So there's a lot of active work being done there. So there's a lot of response. I think the UK, we live in a community, we consume a lot, so and we live in a hashtag kind of society. So we've got attention spans of goldfish, and if we could tap into that and get them to talk about more, getting involved in these issues. But I think there's been a lot of talk from the Greenpeace reached out to me, so a lot of people have reached out. And it's an interesting point that you talk about, because I come from, and I think this is what's kind of missing too, because years ago, like I said, I've been in NHS for 10 years, but one of my journeys in NHS, I was a whistleblower, I caught directors stealing money, etc. I worked in procurement. And I think we need and there wasn't much protection then, and I think we need a more whistleblower we need to protect whistleblowers, especially when it comes to environment, etc. Because we can be ostracised, lose our jobs, blacklisted, etc. And we got, and you can see just how Elon Musk has been acting last few days with his company and treating his staff. It's like, we really need to protect whistleblowers, and especially in brands and corporations.
Yes, and we've seen a couple of legal cases come through. I'm thinking of somebody who worked for a charity actually, and basically their offence was to go around and say, do you actually know what our pension fund is doing? And not to let it lie. And we're told, we're trained as activists, journalists, or, we're trained to be whistleblowers. And yet when you do blow the whistle, all hell breaks, there's no protection. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. These are complex points. They show that communications is an incredibly complex field. You mentioned Vivienne, the late, great Vivienne Westwood, and Vivienne used to talk all the time about delay and distraction, and I interviewed her once, and she drew me a map and explained how I was being distracted and where my focus should be. But not everybody gets that opportunity to have a map drawn by Vivienne Westwood. Yes. And about where they should be focused. How does that how does that affect your work? This is a weird question, and I've not even formulated it properly. But we're all, to some extent, in the entertainment business. We want to capture people and we want to give them something to think about. We want to communicate creatively. But how do we also try and get them to focus and, like you said, get them to vote, get them to take a position? How do we sort of do both that thing, and how do you approach it with something like Shangri-La?
Well, so we came up with a campaign in Shangri-La about 10 years ago called Don't Be a Dick.
That's pretty straightforward.
And then we put it on stickers, and then we made about, like, those stickers just never ran out. And that was one really great way of grassroots getting a message across, because, yeah, you're absolutely right. All our attention spans, and people like Chomsky have predicted this for like 40 years, are just lost. One minute we're looking at your war in Ukraine, next minute we're looking at an advert for a goldfish. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's just madness. So one of the things that we can do as art activists and art people is create a ton of great little messages that, you know, people stick on their phones or whatever. I mean, I know it sounds really stupid and it's not mass, but we believe in that.
I think with the metaverse growing, etc., like that.
Well, that's just one way. As festival organiser,
Yeah.
I'm not anything else than that anyway.
But I think with the metaverse and everything, the technology, you talk about technology, and artists can get out there more. You can have a virtual concert nowadays, etc., like that. But I think that's another way of area we need to tap into, conservationism and all that in the metaverse, because I can see that.
Sure.
Especially the kids. I see it with my kids, you know. The amount of money I spend on V-Bucks, you know.
Amount of money you spend on what?
V-Bucks, Fortnite, yeah.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I
but you
shouldn't know,
should
I've
be,
got
eh?
no kids, but I know.
Yeah. So, but then I see that, that's where I get a lot of my inspiration, watching my children, like how they interact with the world and how they absorb messages, programming at such a young age. And I think that's what sets you up to be an adult. And, you know, and that's where it starts with education, change, you know, but we've got to give them the foundation for change. We can't just say, here, it's a broken planet, fix it. We've got to give them the foundation to change it.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
We have. Okay, let's have some sort of predictions. What's coming next, just to round up? Hannah, what are we going to start experiencing in a festival context that is going to shift the dial on this? It sounds like a lot's happened already.
Yeah, I think brands are noticing that their consumers want to buy for more purpose-driven brands. So I think brands are trying to show they're more purpose-driven by doing more purpose-driven things. So I think the right brands who are actually purpose-driven, like B Corps or 1% for the Planet brands, getting involved in festivals a lot more than they currently are, in much longer. It's an opportunity, I think, for the festival industry. You've got these opportunities for longer-term partnerships with strong brands that want to get in front of your audience, who have got the money to actually help you implement some of these sustainability policies. You know, a lot of, you know, one of the reasons we were able to work with Kendall Corning is Faith in Nature supported a lot of that to happen.
And Faith in Nature is like
they're the nature in the boardroom brand, but they're like a toiletry brand, lots of zero waste toiletries.
And they've been around for a long time.
And they've been around for ages. So there's an opportunity for festivals about the kind of sponsors you can approach and let in and speak to your audience, aligning with your goals. And those types of brands want to have longer term relationships with people because they've got the long term thinking. Obviously, that's why they're purpose driven. So there's an opportunity there for festivals. I think we're going to have to see artists taking more of a stand to be relevant to their audience. So I know that comes across as a bit anti-earth, like, trust me, my whole job is trying to save the planet, but I'm realising the commercial viability of it for business is actually for artists to be relevant to their audience. They need to be talking to their audience about what their audience cares about, and their audience cares about this. So I think it's the time for artists to not get involved, to not sign pledges, to not stand up, to not join things like Earth%. We're going to be in that stolen focus time where their audience's attentions are going to be taken by something else. So they've got to have a deeper relationship with their audience to keep that loyalty. And so do festivals as well. They want to make sure, if you've got a festival, it's going to be much easier if you're creating a great experience to sell those tickets back to the people that came last year rather than find another 10,000 people next year because no one had a good experience. So it makes sense. It's just that longer term thinking in the approach. So opportunities for sponsorship, opportunities to stand out as an event and have a bigger USP, and just put your money where your mouth is, so people know what you're about as an organisation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and I don't, have permission to talk about this, but, I work with Ellie, and she's a mainstream artist, and I can see that there has been a change. So, when she first started posting about anything to do with climate, she'd lose like 400,000 followers, It was like pretty obvious what was happening. I don't think that happens now. And I could see she did a couple of shows recently at Coco in Camden, and I went to one of them, and I think she must have said something. She didn't used to talk that much on stage. She never talks that much on stage anyway, but she might have mentioned climate and nature crisis. And I could see like 2 young fans in front of me go, oh yeah, this is really cool. We also did stuff with the backdrop. We did a roll call of all the young activists working at the Stockholm Nature Summit. And the audience has started to link them together. And that takes time. It's quite painful. It's quite stressful because you think this ship is never going to turn. But if you've got input from the artist and they are brave and willing to do that, take that risk, it does work out in the long term. So I hope we can tell that story more as well, because a lot of the response is fear-based, isn't it? Or the non-response or the not signing the petition is because of fear.
Fear and feeling that you don't have any power, going back to what Zed said, is recognising you have the power as a consumer, as an audience, whatever you want to call it, but also maybe just changing the language. Talking about nature, if you're in a field, makes sense to talk to your audience about nature.
Yeah.
Perhaps talking about the world burning, where everyone's been stood in the rain with a warm cider for 4 hours, might not quite connect with them, So I think it's just about it's maybe a slight change in language and showing what you are doing rather than just showing. Just showing what are you doing as an artist, as a festival, is really important as well, rather than expecting people to do stuff and not actually showing what you're doing yourself.
Yeah, and then a lot of our stuff we'll get from the UN, for example, and of course they talk about biodiversity, which is just a posh word for nature.
Yeah.
So we have to, change all their wording, and then, So it's a constant sort of finding the right words and the right way of expressing it that's accessible and means something to everybody. And it comes back to what you said, it's about how you feel. And there, I hope you're feeling inspired. Yes, please.
I just wanted to communicate. I thought that was really spot on when you were talking about the different language that you use. And we think of aesthetics sometimes as being something surface, but it comes from that word to feel. And that's at the heart of communication, and that's something that we have as artists and organisers.
And that's what music is.
And that's what music is. So I think start with the feeling and communicate that way from there.
Well, we're all about the feels right now, and I hope that you feel that we've got something out of this session. Thank you. I really have learned a lot. Can I say thank you to our panellists, to Zed, to Hannah, and to Chris. Thank you so much.